Hi, Purpose Partner. Welcome to another episode of Rise to Your Purpose, a personal and spiritual development podcast for female entrepreneurs with a mission. We are your hosts, Brandie and Natalie.
We are founders of Victorious Entrepreneurs Rising, where we guide women to build profitable businesses online through diversifying your income, using kingdom principles in marketing, and operating in a spirit of rest so that you can create kingdom impact.
After this episode, be sure to join our Purpose Partner Facebook community and get your copy of our Rise to Your Purpose devotional so we can continue to serve you as we partner together in our faith and business. Let's dive into today's episode.
All right. Hey, ladies, we are back with another episode of Rise to Your Purpose. And some of you may even catch this in our Purpose Partner Community Live, because I told Sabrina, who is our guest here today, that I just wanted as many people to be able to meet her and hear from her as possible, because we have had a few conversations and have just really enjoyed our time together and just the value that she is bringing into the marketplace. And so we are excited to be here today with Sabrina Hammonds, and she is part of the Kingdom Connections podcast and media agency. And she really is, I kind of called her like she's our Kingdom Connector, which is what it's called, Kingdom Connections podcast. So I just love how she is working together with women in the marketplace and really help them get connected to others and really get elevated and get their message out there. But we also wanted to kind of spotlight something that came from a conversation we had, was how you can strategically network and build a relationship within the marketplace. And so she's going to share some of that value and expertise with us. And just, I'm sure a lot of other goodness will come from this conversation that God will highlight along the way that we maybe weren't even expecting yet. So thank you so much, Sabrina, for hopping on and being a part of this podcast with us and being in our community. Some of you may even recognize or remember her from, she did an amazing live with Chrissy McKee, our Christian confidence and mindset coach. So we are excited to have her just connected to us in this way. So thank you, Sabrina, for jumping on.
Thank you, Natalie. I'm so excited to be here. Like you said, we have had some really cool and powerful conversations, I feel like, and they've all been surrounded or centered around the idea of connecting, like really connecting with people, and specifically with women, and for us as kingdom women to come together for that one purpose, and that's to grow and advance and further God's kingdom. And I keep saying this over and over, but about there just being room. There's room for all of us. And I think there's such power in approaching connecting with people that way, to understand and recognize that what we all bring is so valuable and so needed. And so I'm really, really excited about our conversation today.
Yeah, and I love that. And I know you've met Michelle from GPA, and
yes,
and I've always loved that tagline, there's no competition in the kingdom. And
yes,
realizing, and I think that's been on my heart for so long, and coming from the network marketing industry, where I saw so many times women like almost segregating, like not willing, if you weren't on my team, or if we didn't benefit each other financially, then we weren't really going to work together. And I thought, that is something that needs to shift and needs to change. And so I think having this conversation can help, if women have experienced that before, that we can be the catalyst, we can be the change within our own communities to really help see that women can come together from all backgrounds, different businesses, different companies. Doesn't matter what it is, because in the kingdom, we are all have an important piece to play. And I know we were talking about a scripture before that kind of goes with that, but that there's a voice that we each have in that message. So I think it's going to be something that needs to continue to be spread and shared, and that like we're giving you permission to shine your light and to go out and be what you were made to be.
That's right. Yes. And that, talking about that part in the word where it's talking about the body, one thing that I think is so powerful is about, and it's in 1 Corinthians 12, and it starts in 12 and 14, where it's talking about the value, each person's value, and that no one is less than or greater than. And so we all have such an important part to play, and I think it's so powerful when we come together as that one body, and we remind each other too, hey, what you have to offer is so incredible. Like, to stir each other up and to, what is the word, spur each other on, right? To remind each other of the value that we bring so that we don't shrink back or that we don't compare or diminish. But we're like, no, like you need to get out here because what you have to say, or, you know, the value you're bringing in your business, it needs to get out there. And so I think that's important too, to remember that we need to stir each other up and to encourage one another, because I think sometimes we are tempted to kind of diminish or shrink back or think that, oh my gosh, I see what she's doing. And that, like, that's really, really powerful. And then it's that comparison.
Yeah. Well, I can personally relate to that because I look back at my journey and I am so grateful how God has worked in me and helped me go through things. But I do look back of how where I can see where he was calling me out and up, and I was shrinking back for those same reasons. I saw other people that I thought were maybe doing it better or looked better or sounded better than I thought I was going to. And you get stuck easily in that comparison or not feeling like you're good enough or qualified. And so I love that we can actually look in scripture though and just see so many people that God did call when they weren't ready. You know, they didn't feel ready themselves or didn't feel equipped or like they could do it. But look how many he used to rise up. And it was mentors and women that it took to like get me out of like that shell or out of that worry of what, you know, what are people going to think or say, but more so focused on, but who can you serve if you are willing to speak out, if you're willing to just take that next step, because someone somewhere is attached to your calling and waiting on you to act. And so and so really it's so important to have those connections and those relationships. So I think that's I would love to hear how, and have them here too, like how you kind of came into this role of being a kingdom connector, and what does that look like to be able to network, you know, in the marketplace or with women, and do it in a way that is strategic, but also still authentic and genuine, where we don't have to feel like we're being, you know, spamming people, but it really can be about building those relationships too.
Yeah. So just really quickly, the very short version of the backstory of how, like, why I'm so passionate about the stories of others and the messages of others is because my business began because of someone else's story that they shared with me that impacted my life in an incredibly radical way that I don't even have the time to go into it here. But that's how it started. It started with one woman. We got to know each other. She began to share testimony with me. And it impacted my life so much that I said, hey, you need to share this with other people. And we began to work together like that. And that is how I started Kingdom Connections. It wasn't at that time Kingdom Connections, but that's how it started. And so, like, I personally know and understand the power of someone else's message and how it has impacted my life, but it's also impacted my family.
Oh, yeah.
It's impacted my children. Like, you know, so it's not even, don't ever diminish the impact of one. But yes, so coming back to strategically connecting, I began strategically connecting in January of this year. And so before that, I really, if I'm being honest, didn't even want to be in the online space.
Okay.
I had just been praying and asking the Lord, I'm like, if there's any way that I can do this without being on social media, can I just not?
Yeah.
Because honestly, there was so much noise. There was so much noise, and I didn't know how to be on there in a way that wasn't spammy or salesy. And so I didn't want to do it at all. But when I knew the Lord had said, you know what, you need to be on there because this is where your people are. And you've got to put yourself out there. And I said, okay, Lord, I need you to show me what is this going to look like? And that's when he began to speak to me about selecting groups, very specific and targeted groups that I could go into. And it really just started out by praying. That was the first thing. I just sat before the Lord and I just said, God, you know who I'm called to be, who I'm called to serve, and you know where these people are. You know their names, the names of the women that you've called me to connect with. And so then I began to look at my long list of groups that I was a part of. And I had to start by weeding out some that didn't fit anymore, that I wasn't supposed to be in. And then I said, Lord, highlight those places that you would have me to go to. And I even had to start searching, because I realized some of the stuff that I was in, the groups that I was in, really wasn't a fit for where God had brought me. Like maybe it was a fit for before, but my people weren't really in there. And so I had to search specifically for my people, kingdom women. And so that's another piece of where I started, is just searching for those groups and asking the Lord for discernment. Where should I go? And he gave me 5 specific groups, 5 groups that I was supposed to go into each week. And I would go into 3 of them on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then the other 2 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And before I would go into those groups, I would just say just a simple prayer, God, open my eyes to see people, because I didn't want to go in there and just do the you just go there and you just kind of like different things. And it's really going through the motion.
Right.
That's what I felt like it was doing. And so I just would start praying, God, open my eyes to see people, to see your daughters that you want me to connect with. And as I just began interacting, some of it was it was all very natural.
Yeah.
I began to see some of the same names in the same groups that I was a part of. And I began to realize that we were kind of speaking the same language. And so then I would just reach out to them and be like, hey, I noticed we're in a lot of the same groups, and I feel like we're passionate about a lot of the same things. Would you be open to just getting to know each other? I kind of felt it was a little bit awkward at first, just to be honest. Like, I was overthinking, like, what do I say? How do I reach out? Like, I just want to get to know you. Like, is that going to sound icky? Like, like, I don't want to sound icky. Like, I'm being genuine, And so you can tell some people, like, when you reach out, like, they don't really know how to respond to genuineness sometimes. They're just ready with their 30-second pitch. But I just kept going back in, and the Lord would open doors, where people would send me a voice message, and they're like, yeah, I would love to get to know, like, okay, and so that's really, we just started having conversations, and some women just started reaching out to me, and, and then we talked, and then you connected me with somebody else that, with Chrissy. And so, like, I feel like what God has done has been so natural and so new, but oh my gosh, so refreshing.
Yeah.
So refreshing. And what I have found is that there are people that are hungry for relationships. There are those that I feel like they're just waiting for us to reach out authentically and sit on a call and listen to them.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think it's, in some way, I see some people, and I'm not saying that this is wrong or anything, but I do see in the marketplace when it's taught of like, don't waste time in Messenger, and don't waste time talking to everybody, just have them come to you, or, and there's all this like kind of most low touch. And I kept looking at that and thinking like, well, maybe that's what I should do, because I'm, using time in the DMs, or I'm on calls or whatever. But I just kept going back to, again, I love that seeking the Lord on, well, Lord, how do you want me to build my business? How do you want me to connect with people?
Yeah.
And having some automation, things like that, I think is wonderful. But that's just what I came back to, like, as a Christian too, I feel like that's one of the best things that we can do in the marketplace. And that's what God really highlighted to me when I was kind of getting burnt out on social media a little bit as well, but I still felt like there was something here. It's a great way to be able to build a business without leaving your home, essentially, and tools. And it really just highlighted to me that this is your mission field. I always thought I was going to like go serve in a country or something. And then I thought, well, I did try that and it wasn't really for me. And then I thought, here's a place where I can still be hands and feet. And like, how could I do that? And having God show me different ways to do that. And that has been one of those things, is like taking just that extra little bit of your time to connect with someone. to let them know that you see what they're doing, you appreciate what they're doing, and hey, there might be a really great way for us to collaborate. I don't know what that looks like, but if you're open to connecting, I'd love to do that. And so I love that. I think that's just been a simple way to do that. And sometimes it can end up with a client, you never know, but sometimes it's just a great connection that can maybe lead you to another one that can lead, and that's where we leave those, I think, results up to the Lord of how he wants you and what that's going to look like. But I love how you shared that of seeking him first, then
Mm-hmm.
followed through on that divine strategy that he gave you of using groups and then sending that message and being willing to take a little bit of extra time to really connect
Yeah.
really with people, but still strategically that you're not talking to just anyone and everyone, still your ideal client. So I think it's important to know that's a good point for our listeners, I think, to make sure you know who your ideal client is.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then but don't be afraid to start those conversations and how important that can be. Again, like you were mentioned earlier, the body of believers, we all have, it kind of makes me think of the Acts chapter 2 moment with the unity of believers, and they were all able to give to according to each other's needs, and no one was everyone had what
Yes.
they needed, no one was without. And that, I think that can be the same in the marketplace. Like if I need a mentor for something, I can find someone, or anything that you need, you could probably find if you're willing to look and ask and have those conversations.
Yes, I think that's so powerful what you said about they were all in one accord, they were all together, and everyone had everything that they needed. And who knows, like there's so many people online and there's so many people out there that are genuinely seeking the Lord also,
Mm-hmm.
just like we are, that are wanting to build God's kingdom using their gifts and their talents. And just imagine, I mean, I feel like our connection alone, just having these powerful conversations and you connecting me with somebody else, and we're just two people, just two people. But yet I feel like there's such power in our connection because of the way that we're moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so just imagine the
Yeah.
more people that you connect with and the resources from that. I mean, again, it's not necessarily about what can you get out of it, but it's about us all coming together and using our gifts, right? And so it's not like I'm coming to you because I want to use something of yours that you have. It just, I feel like the Lord does connect us with people for purposes, and ultimately the purpose is to further his kingdom. But I mean, I have connected with so many different women that it ends up to be maybe they're a part of an organization, like the conversation that I got to have with Michelle, and what she is doing, or maybe it's an individual and their business is similar to mine or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm telling you, there is power in being open to real connections and being open to just say, man, what you're doing is so incredible. I wonder, like, what could we do together?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it kind of gives me chills just thinking about it, and like empowering women to go out and do that. Like, and I think that would be a great like action step if, for those of you listening, like take that next step, to one, seek the Lord on what is the
Yeah.
next kind of business strategy for you, and then act on that. And so is that going and networking in groups, or, building your network strategically in that way, but then really having that conversation, and like I said, not overthinking it. I find that so much too. Like it can be easy to overthink it or get
Yes.
angry or whatever, but it really just take that first step. And if, I love, you mentioned voice messages. I do love those because I do think it helps women to just immediately connect with you and see you are trying to be, and that you do want to be genuine, and see what collaboration can be there with you, instead of, like you said, just immediately going for, and because a lot of our audience is network marketing, instead of immediately going for, hey, I have this product, or hey, I have this, finding out about them first to even see would it be a good fit,
Yes.
and just opening that door and that conversation, finding out, and there's a scripture too, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I read it the other day too, and I loved how it said, like, be more interested in others than like in yourself essentially and I think it was from the Passion Translation or something, and I thought that's like so spot on for when you're thinking of marketing, like that's really what we want to do.
Yes. And also, you might find like the Lord gives you a strategy to use for a time. Because
Mhm.
I know recently the Lord had told me, and I've been doing this since January. So for 5 months, I've been going, and some of the groups have changed as I have just seen, and again, asking the Lord, is this still where I'm supposed to be or whatever? And so those groups haven't stayed the exact same for the entire 5 months. Um, but just recently, I heard the Lord say, now I want you to look back at all those connections that you've made, and I want you to spend more time going back and fostering those relationships and going back to those people, and
Mhm.
instead pulling back and only going into the groups twice a week.
Yeah.
And then on the other days, I want you to go back to those relationships and to those people. And at first, honestly, I had a little bit of apprehension about it, because I was like, oh my gosh, I've been going in there consistently like every week, and
Right.
I'm present. Like, what's going to happen if I pull back and I'm not in there anymore? Like,
Mhm.
but he was like, you know what? You've really put yourself out there. They know who you are. They know your business. Like, now it's time to go back and again work on those relationships that you have built. Because my concern, and I feel like maybe other people feel this way too, about not being, if you're not present on social media all the time, like, what is that? Like, I have to be on there
Right.
every day. I have to,
Yeah.
I feel like that.
Yeah.
And when the Lord had told me to go in there every day, I think it was just because he needed, like, obviously our obedience, like whatever he tells you to do, like that's what you need to do.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, I needed to put myself out there because
Yeah.
I had not been.
Mm-hmm.
But now, like, he's given me this different strategy to go back to the relationships. But I think whatever the Lord is saying for you to do, like, again, remember, he knows exactly who you're supposed to reach out to. Like, he knows the connections. And I feel like if we do sit and listen, he'll give us the strategies
Yeah.
that we need in order to be who he's called us to be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super inspiring. And I look back too, and I think I can see the same thing in my business journey. There, especially during COVID, I was like, I have all this free time. And I just remember earnestly praying, like, okay, Lord, how do you want me to use my social media now that I have all this extra time? And that's where he really had me doing, I was interviewing people a lot, just right on my profile. This was pre-podcast and we hadn't started it quite yet. And so I just started interviewing them there. And then that's kind of how we turned it into a podcast. And then I woke up in the middle of the night, like 2 in the morning, and I got in the Word Wednesdays. And so every Wednesday I went live and did or posted something that had to do with like in the Word and how that would connect to business and everything. And it was interesting where then there was a time where I was like, I was having trouble kind of keeping up with that. And so I just went back into prayer. And I think that's what you have to do. You have to like evaluate. So put this pressure on
Yes.
yourself is like evaluate
Yes.
where you're at, what's the new season. And he's like, yeah, you don't have to do it anymore. Like you don't have to maintain it constantly. So then instead of on my profile, it became, it was more about our purpose partner community. And what a great way we could have myself do it, my sister, Chrissy could do it, or other purpose partners that I see just being so enthusiastic for the Lord, and then letting them have a space where they could come and share their knowledge of the word and how the Lord's speaking through them on different topics. And so it's been a really cool way to now like elevate other women. So I think it's so key to like keep reflecting and keep like going back and evaluating and then seeing, okay, God, what do you want me to do now? So, but it can be a little like, wait, I was so used to doing this. And then
Yeah.
getting used to that. And he's been really, I think too, like even now, like calling me get back to basics. Like you were saying, like, you don't have to be on everything. You've kind of put in your time a little bit, like now focus on these areas. So, and kind of just get back to those basics. And so I love that you mentioned that about just kind of reflecting and evaluating, and you can always change it up.
Yeah. I think sometimes we have pressures on ourselves that really are not necessary because we're looking at what everybody else is doing, and we think that that is the way,
Mm-hmm.
which is why I preface what I say by, ask the Lord, pray. This has really worked for me because I just couldn't see myself going online and being authentic because I didn't know what that looked like. I'm just being honest. Like, I knew I can go in these groups and I can hit the like button a whole bunch of times. I can, pop in a few comments here and there. And that was pretty much what I was doing
Yeah.
before, and I wasn't connecting with anybody really.
Right. It's almost like
I did
emotions, but not, just because you thought
I was just that's exactly what it is. I was just doing the things that I thought you're supposed to do as someone who's in the online space, and you're there for, business and connections and quote unquote networking. Like, let me just do the things I know to do, but I never, and so I thought maybe I'll just ask the Lord, like, what do you say, Lord? Because if you're telling me I need to be here, then obviously you know how this can look, and how this can be purposeful.
Yeah.
And again, it just kept coming back to me, like, I want to see people. I really want to see people, because, someone on the other side of their post or whatever, that's a person. Like, that is an individual. And I feel like sometimes we can get so lost in all of this stuff that we're not connecting with real people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so easy to do when you're on social media, because there's so many. And it's just like, it can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
But God is still a God of relationships.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I feel
Very much. And I feel like he really wants to get back to that.
yes.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh no, I thought you had cut off for a sec, or stop, because it cut off on me for a minute. So I apologize. But no, I think that same too. Like, God is calling us to get back to relationships. And
Yes.
that's why I think even taking like whatever you're doing, thinking of it as that like relationship marketing, like you are marketing your business or your service, what you have, but like remember relationships first. And how and looking and seeking the Lord. And I love that. Such a perfect way to say how we partner with God. What a great way, tangible way that we can see that is like, it's something as simple as a prayer before you start your time, networking, or before you, when you're reevaluating your business. It's just having that simple conversation with the Lord, and that prayer and that relationship with him. He calls us into relationship with him.
Yes.
And then we can model that, right, with relationship with others. And I don't know if you watched The Chosen, or have you seen that yet?
Some of it I have. Yes.
I think that's one of the things I love, is just how he was always diligent in his work, and kind of just seeing that now is like portrayed in a video way. Sorry if you hear my husband in the background. But it kind of just brought that to life of like, oh, he was like spending so much time with people. And even though he's very diligent in pursuing his purpose and what God had and wanted him to do each day, and sometimes he'd work real late into the evening and healing and all kinds of things that you don't think always about, but that he always still had time for that woman at the well, or the person who, the woman who came and touched his cloak, like he was willing to stop what he's doing and turn around and, and seek her out. So, and that's what you never know what people are going through, and your one like message could make their day, that that someone saw them, or someone is open to hearing what's going on in their life or business right now. So
yes. And that's so powerful what you just said about the crowd. There was the crowd, and then there was the one woman in the midst of that crowd. And I know one of the books, I can't remember exactly where, that talks about, where he says, "Who touched me? Who was it?" And they're telling him, "There's all these people around you. What do you mean? What do you mean?" And of course he was talking about the power had gone out of him, but it was one person in the midst of all of the entire crowd. And it reminds me of the other story about Zacchaeus, and how he was up in the tree, and there were so many people, but he called him by name.
Yeah.
And he told him to come down, and he went and spent time with him in his house. So all these people, and like, he's probably very, sought after, right? Because he's performing miracles and all of this. So he had to be busy in one sense, because everybody wanted his attention. And I mean, he had to climb up in a tree just to even see him. So that tells you there had to be so many people there. But then he calls him by name. He knew his name, and then he went and spent time with him. Like, if that doesn't speak to how personal God is, like, he is so personal. And I think it's just, when you take the time to get to know somebody, get to know their name, and get to know their story. And then from there, I feel like it's all God, whatever the Lord would have you to do from there. But I think there's just such power in taking the time to get to know people. I really do.
Yeah, I love that. I think you made such a great point too of how he like knew them by name. And I think that is something I just want listeners to know too, is like wherever you're at in your journey of faith, God knows you by name.
Yes.
And he is calling you. You might be feeling that call right now. And
yes,
he has a plan and a purpose for you. And there's a reason, if you feel called in entrepreneurship, right, there's a reason and a purpose for that. And so seeking him and knowing that he cares for you and he loves you and he wants to go on this journey with you. And so just link arms with him, partner with him. And he's here to guide you along the way and to connect you with the women and the people who can help you along, on that journey as well. So definitely that just made me think of like, want you to know that you are loved and you've been chosen.
Yes. He calls you by name. I mean, the word even says he knows the very thoughts that we have. Mm-hmm. He knows when we get up, when we lay down, he knows our very thoughts, and he knows your name, and he has a purpose and a plan that is so specific to you and your gifts. With all these people and all the, you want to say, well, surely I can't do this because there's all these other people that are already doing this. No, a perfect plan that is for you and those special gifts that he's placed on the inside of you. So good. So good.
I feel like that's like a perfect ending for this, is just to kind of let them, you guys can meditate on that and just kind of let that seep into you. But I'm so glad we were able to have this conversation. I think there's just so many, I was even kind of just taking notes on here and some things that just stood out to me. So I'm sure so many women will all want to go back and even re-listen or take notes over this, but it's just very powerful. And I love always getting to connect with you. So thank you so much. Is there anything else you think you want to share, and how can women get connected to you if they want to meet you and maybe jump on a Zoom with you, or, be a part of your Kingdom Connections podcast, immediate agency, or do any work with you? How can they do that?
Yeah. So first, something that you said that I feel like should be brought back, and that's the results. Leave the results to the Lord, because you may be thinking that I am doing all of these things and I am connecting. And I'll just tell you, in the last couple of days, I've had 3 calls that went nothing like I had thought they were going to go. But I had the opportunity for these people to pour into my life and to confirm some things that God had been speaking to me. So, I mean, they weren't wasted calls, but they definitely weren't what I thought they were going to be at all. But God knows, like he knows who you need to be connected with. And I would just say, do not worry about the results. Yeah. Leave the results to the Lord. Mm-hmm. Because if you're doing what he's called you to do, and you're listening and you're showing up like he's called you to, then he's going to bring the harvest. He's going to bless your work and provide above and beyond all that you could ask or think or imagine. So I thought that leave the results to the Lord was so powerful, because I sometimes think that we get caught up in that. But yes, if anyone is interested in Kingdom Connections and connecting with us, if you're wanting to be on podcast, or you feel like God has called you to share your message with a wider audience and you don't even know how to do that or what that looks like, or you just want to have a conversation, I would love to connect with you and hear what God is doing and hear your story and see how we can support you.
Wonderful. Yeah. And we'll have all her information in the show notes for the podcast. And then if you catch her on live, then definitely, I know you take the DMs. So obviously,
yes.
Her DMs, don't be afraid to do that and have that conversation and let her know you met her through the podcast or the Purpose Partner community. And
yes,
I know that will be a great connection. So thank you so much again, Sabrina. Loved having you. And hopefully you all can get.
Thank you, Natalie.
All right, we'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We would love to hear from you. So please share your takeaways by tagging @LiveVictorious over on Instagram and leave a review.
This will help us get more visibility and reach more women like you for the kingdom. We appreciate you and are praying for you as you shine your light in the business world and rise to your purpose.